Hello and welcome to another Writer Showcase, everybody. I am excited for this week as ever. Allow me to bring in my guests. First off, please welcome. Uh,
Let's go!
yep,
What's up, everyone?
what's up? And welcome our friend, Tarek.
Here's to the bard and the pollen we plumb. Here's to the beast and the rest of you scum. The cage is locked in and the town is aflame, and it's ours for the taking, though you get the fame.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And
Hello.
I don't have. I think this will do.
Oh, that works splendidly.
Sorry,
So-
was that too much? Was that too loud at the beginning of it there?
No, it's fine. So that is actually the Doom Eternal trailer.
Oh,
The teaser trailer.
Yeah, the teaser.
I'm
trailer.
sorry, edgy? That's not edgy. That's it's metal.
oh,
How
super
dare
metal.
you, Becca?
badass.
It is pretty metal. It is
Oh.
pretty metal. Alrighty. So does anybody have any time constraints or anything that makes it so that they need to present first, or how do we want it? How do you guys? Anything that I need to be aware of?
I'm actually good for the full
Same.
thing today.
Yep, me too.
I don't have any time constraints either.
Alrighty, then we can simply go clockwise from Wasia to me.
Oh, okay. So I'm going first then?
Yep, that is correct.
Oh, all right. Let me just go ahead and situate myself, get myself in the mood. So I decided to go ahead and represent my chapter 1 because it has gone through a lot of changes, and I kind of want to see how far I've came along in terms of editing my stuff. So without further ado, I present chapter 1, Awakening. She was happy. Rosa and her sister were sitting between their parents on a couch, watching something on the screen late at night. She remembered the radiance of Maria's smile that night, the joy beaming from her grin. However, Rosa was drowsy, her eyelids heavy, sealing shut as she fell asleep. You poor child. A small burning flame in the dark cave flickered through her head, bruised and battered with Maria crying over her. Even after all they've done, Rosa gasped, seeing the fire in the cave had burned brighter until now it consumed the house surrounding her. All they took from you. She had Maria between her arms, holding her close as the world collapsed around her. You still fight for them. Rosa collapsed to her knees, her breath stripped from her lungs. The city around her was set ablaze. Ash and soot fell like so many raindrops as the sky turned a dark crimson. Smoke bellowed from the burning buildings, and the streets lined with the burned bodies of men, women, and children, with a roaring fire just ahead. It was from there that his voice boomed. So, I'll issue you my last warning. A clinking echoed through the streets. She blinked, watching his obsidian form emerge from the flames, his golden trims and horns glimmering against the infernal light. He approached her and raised his blade, its golden light briefly illuminating his face. "Stay out of my way." Rosa jolted and gasped, waking up just in time to see the liquid drain past her neck. The pod's door opened, and although her body ached, she managed to move her limbs outside the container, grabbing onto the rims. She pulled herself out, took a step outside the pod, her high heels wobbling on the slippery ground, causing her to lose balance and stumble over. Still wet and out in the cold, dark blue chamber, she shivered. Rosa rolled over to sit upright and moved her long pink hair away from her eyes. She looked at herself, noticing something odd about what she was wearing. The material was black and had a leathery feel with cherry-colored rose patterns on the more solid parts. She was wearing gloves that reached past her elbows with a hexagonal plate on the back of her hands. A pair of stockings covered her legs with glowing pink rings around her thighs, the same hexagons placed there as well. She had something over her pelvis, but her chest was barely covered by a strap running around the back of her neck. She wrapped her arms around herself and curled up, still shivering from the cold. What what's going on? Why am I soaked? Rosa's mind briefly flashed back to the nightmare. Who who was that? What did he mean by avoid strain her train of sending goosebumps across her bronze skin and nearly freezing her in place. Rosa looked in the direction she heard it, finding a man with caramel-colored skin, oily black hair, and equally black pants. He had a brutish form, something his black shirt couldn't hide. She checked to her right, spotting a blackened sword with glowing pink teeth on either side, and a magenta glowing orb built into its crossguard. She picked it up and got to her feet, not breaking eye contact with the stranger. He stood, arms crossed, confident and proud. His smile, however, was unnerving. His voice shared in the pompousness of his pose. "Hey, sorry it took so long to wake ya." Rosa, feeling warmer now that the last of the liquid had evaporated, removed her arms from herself. She kept her tone smooth and assertive. "Hey," she paused, checking behind him. "What's going on here? And what do you mean by waking me up?" The stranger seemed taken aback. "Oh, simple. I'm your new commander, and you're my super hot super soldier." Rosa raised an eyebrow. "New? Then what happened to my old commander? And hold on, he still hasn't answered my question." She saw his eyes dart around. Rosa traced his gaze to where he was looking. Her chest. Her almost bare chest. Face reddening and eyebrows coming together, Rosa voiced her irritation. "Hey, don't look at me like that. My eyes are up here." The man laughed. "Why not? You've got them pretty big. Fuck, they're probably the biggest I've seen." She felt a light blast of heat as the irritation became anger. Rosa's eyes twitched, yet she kept her calm, trying to reason with him. "It makes me uncomfortable when you do that." "Yeah? And what are you gonna do about it?" He leaned in, trying to invade her space. Rosa snarled and pointed her now burning blade at her commander. "I don't know. What am I gonna do about it?" He staggered, then backed up, breaking his pose. "Hey, easy there. You're not about to kill someone you just met, right?" "Trust me, I'd rather not." Rosa's icy blue gaze met his hazel eyes, a grin growing on his face. Good, he whispered. Rosa raised an eyebrow, until, suddenly, she felt a punch to her gut. A loud and soft blast ruptured her eyes of burning. She groaned and backed up, dropping her weapon as her eyes traced the pain to an ominous golden nail stuck into her, one with an orange glow around it. She heard him chuckle, and before she could react, he arrested one of her arms and placed a knife to her throat. Her eyes widened, a mix of fear and sheer rage, while her form tensed. He grinned, cheek to cheek, and whispered contemptuously, "Because I've already had to terminate 2 more just like you, and I'm not in the mood to make that 3. She felt her pulse spike, her fists clenched. His eyes darted away from her one last time. Besides, I'd rather not waste a body like that. In one swift motion, he released her arm and pulled the nail out, backing up and stowing his knife away. Rosa exhaled, given room to breathe, and feeling a rush of relief knowing the nail's been pulled out. She nearly collapsed to her knees. The agony slowly evaporated, and she refocused on him, eyebrows drawn together. She glared at him as he walked away. "You better sleep with one eye open, you fucker!" she roared in her head, gritting her teeth together. Her eyes started down at her abdomen, seeing the wound had sealed. "Hey!" he called, still carrying some of that contempt. "This way. We're heading to my office." Rosa restrained herself, exhaling. Her eyes darted to his belt, spotting a holstered pistol and a pair of knives. No doubt about it. He's armed and a disgusting fucker. If I'm gonna kill him, it's gonna have to be while his guard's down. Rosa picked up her blade and started walking at the chamber. Besides, he's already admitted to murdering 2 women. I guess I'll just be bringing justice by killing him too. Halfway out the door, Rosa felt a strange urge to look back. As she did so, she spotted 8 pods, 7 of which were empty, but Maria Luna was floating in the pod next to hers. Rosa's rage subsided as she examined her. The woman had long black hair like the night sky, mature and feminine features, clean, paler skin, and a face too similar to her own. Rosa hesitated to step out, feeling drawn to her, as though a voice was begging to stay by her side. She shook her head and exited the chamber, the question still pecking at her brain. Not now. I have to stay focused. Can't turn my back on this guy. Rosa stepped out, grasping the rail of Purple Metal Valley. She looked up and found it didn't get any brighter as she looked, suggesting the structure was underground. The walls appeared lined with pods very similar to her own at the lower levels, and were slowly replaced with glass windows at the higher she looked. Multiple bridges connected one side to the other, with a monorail traveling the facility's length. Scattered across the numerous bridges and walkways stood armed guards. Drones flew above her in the air, too quick or too far to discern their shape. Damn, this is quite the operation we've got going on here, she noted. She noted before flinching as she heard her commander abruptly call out to her. "Hey, Nix! Elevators this way!" She pivoted her head, seeing his hand over his pistol. "You can go sightseeing later. Right now, you've got to deal with this guy." Rosa exhaled, letting go of the rail, not knowing she had bent it, nor that it was glowing red. "Yes, sir," she let out, walking past him into the elevator. "Oh, and one more thing." She winced, feeling the barrel of his gun press against her back. "Keep your ass where I can see it." Her eyes swelled up, her eyes swelled up and her mind put in a constant haze, her breathing uneasy. She glanced to her right, seeing a pair of guards just standing there. not paying attention to her. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. She watched the glass doors of the elevator slide open, and she stepped on board. Rosa noticed a panel on the back corner that read out the floor's number and its name. Currently, it read Floor 49, Stasis Chambers. So, I was put in stasis. But still, why? She felt a force press against her heels. The lift was heading up. Her commander grabbed her arm and forced her around, facing the exit. The gun was still firmly pressed against her back. Then, for reasons she couldn't explain, he spoke to her. I'm not your original commander, by the way. Your actual commander just wanted me to prepare you for your mission. She glanced back, noticing something different about his voice. His lower lip twitched, his form slightly unstable. There's gonna be some bastard we want you to kill, and he's already on his way. He's a real piece of work. Yeah, I'm sure you are. Rosa dismissed him, watching the elevator doors slide open. To your left, he said, as she walked down. Her eyes started around, seeing doors on either side of the dark blue corridor, almost like a hotel. There were screens right next to each one, displaying a name whenever they got close. One of them, to her left, read Linen Volta. It was also then that he barked his orders. Hold it. This is our stop. She saw him face the door of the last name she read. Well, watching him pull out a card, I'm gonna be stuck alone in a room with this guy? She scoffed. Well, probably not many cameras inside, so if I'm gonna get rid of him, this is gonna be my best chance. Rosa heard her own pulse, watching him scan the card, which popped open a finger scanner. He reached for it, right as Rosa's ear twitched. Linen's finger jolted, hearing a ringtone from his ear pod. He reached for it. What? Rosa shuddered, watching the color drain from his face and his confidence wither away. He's here? Already? She saw him glance at her. But I even haven't... The hell? Does he mean the guy he wants me to kill? He grabbed her arm. Come on, we have to go. Now. Instinctually, she yanked her arm free. The fuck do you mean? What's even happening? Now! He yelled, his eyes wide with fear. Rosa snarled. Guess we'll have to just take care of this on the road. Fine, she spat out and followed him down the hallway. And that marks the end of chapter 1.
Woo.
Just an off-topic question, real quick. Did anybody else notice him coming in and out, or was that just me?
There was some downtime, but it was usually back pretty quick.
Okay, so it wasn't just me. Okay, I want to make sure it wasn't my internet.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you guys. My connection has been, well, not very good.
That's all right.
All right. As for what I thought, well, you finally got the consistency and the tone issue down. This was far more coherent than than the last few times you've done this.
Well, especially compared to the original version of this chapter.
No, it had a much cleaner through line.
Oh, yeah.
Like in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a long time ago, I think almost immediately after I went on the stream, when I first reviewed this thing, I immediately got to work on this. This is technically the second version of this chapter since I've been on the stream. The first, yeah. Thanks, Becca. Yeah, so the reason why this is the second version is because I decided to split the original chapter in half. So this was the first half of the original thing, and I have a second chapter, which is the second half of this thing. I figured that 3,000 words was too long for the first
Yes.
Yeah.
chapter. I mean, especially after, the prologue, which itself was also about 3,000 words.
Holy moly.
Any thoughts or opinions on this?
I think I was coming in pretty fresh on the world and the story, so I was very intrigued by the hot leathery assassins. Was it assassins? Was it? Sorry, no, I'm thinking of fucking. Sorry, that was. Sorry, I just started quoting something else. But yeah, that was very interesting.
Yeah. Don't worry, Becca. Don't worry. That's just not even close to being the case at all. It's just not a universal rule. I mean, I guess it's just for like this one chapter. I decided that it would have like a leathery feel, but it's not exactly leather, not by a long shot.
All right.
Okay. Any thoughts on the characters? Any thoughts on at all?
Not really. Like, I really don't have much to say on the characters because again, this is chapter 1, and I kind of recall where this is going, but it's been a while, since I've thought about it. But they seem much better since you had a consistent direction.
Yeah. Because my goal over here was, all right, let's take Lynn and Volta and let's make it the most unlikable piece of garbage that has ever graced my book. And let's also make certain that the audience knows, hey, Rosa really doesn't like it when you admit to murdering people, and she doesn't take people's crap either.
I thought she was more upset about the sexual harassment than the murder.
She was, I think. I tried to convey that she was upset about both, but yeah, admittedly, it does read like she's using it as an excuse to kick his butt anyway. All right. That's all?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on now.
Fanatic, you mind going next? I still got some people at the house, and they're going to be leaving in a few minutes. So it'd be better if you went next.
Sure. My stuff.
Before we move on, I just wanted to shout out Axula1 in chat. He's a real life friend of mine that I invited to the stream. Thanks for being gone, buddy.
Oh well, that was nice of him to come along.
Yeah,
represent.
He's in the chat right now.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for coming. I'm hoping to get at least my prologue in chapter 1, well, the first chapter, done. I guess I'll see how long it goes on for. All right. I know I can cut out a chunk of the prologue because I was planning on doing it anyway. All right. I guess I will begin. Oh, fuck. Let me just get some water. All right. So this is my story, Coin. It's part of a series that I'm calling the Symphonic Cycles. All right, let's begin. Prologue, Pillar of Flame. Lord Edward stood on the crest of the hill, facing the direction they had come, the direction in which their home was, Illyria. It would still be their home even after the monsters were done pillaging everything of value from it, even after they were finally content with the suffering they have caused and swiftly ended the lives of the remaining families. If we had seen them coming, we might have gotten the women and children out. Beneath him, the horse moved restlessly, skin trembling. Maybe my own family would have survived such a savage attack on our home. Now I can't even bring myself to close my eyes. If I do, I'll see them and their beautiful faces, and all I want to do is be with them. He looked around at the 100 or so camped around him, a small memory of those who resided in and guarded Illyria. Their convictions were broken, horses spent. Some tended to their wounds, others stood watch. A few were taken by grief and occupied themselves with quiet mourning. How many of them survived? How many had any at all? We are hunted and haunted. Despite their sun hanging high in the sky, a dark cloud settled on their camp of misery, pressing down on them. It had followed them ever since their flight from the town. The unwavering sunlight cast shadows from the hill they sat on to the speck in the distance that was Illyria. Somewhere in between was a contingent of beasts whose sole purpose was to hunt their weary band of men. Their home was too far from any other settlement capable of housing them, and in their panicked exodus, they'd cut themselves off from the realm. There were only enough horses for Edward and the 40-odd remnants of the city watch, while the invaders rode mounts that, despite lacking the endurance of theirs, could outpace them across short distances. Edward thumbed the hilt of the sword sheathed on his belt as his eyes cast a wide arc over the surrounding areas. A column of stone protruded from the ground some distance away, less than a quarter of the distance from the camp to Illyria, and bathed in shadows. "Captain, what is that?" His head facing towards the object that stood like a thorn in the horizon. Roland, the captain of the watchmen, brought his horse alongside and followed the point of his nose. "By my reckoning, that be an old tower." The old soldier squinted his hard eyes, causing the white whiskers over his upper lip to droop. "I've not had the displeasure of visiting it myself. I don't wager that it will be unoccupied." His gaze settled on Edward as he spoke. "The bluebirds will be the least of our concerns. I don't intend to allow them the satisfaction of picking us off in the open." Edward's eyes still fixed on the tower. "I don't think you do either." He turned to look at the old man, whose chainmail clung to him like a well-worn glove. The captain nodded and spoke no more words as he spurred his horse towards the men. They were weary and uneager to be roused, but they obeyed all the same. To stay was to resign themselves to die by the hands of creatures that knew little of mercy. They made sluggish progress, for the horses could only go as fast as the slowest man, and with every opportunity Edward took to assess how far they were, the dark shape would gain more definition. Once they were in the shadow of the tower, the beasts were not more than a league away. Edward dismounted and joined Roland, who appeared to be admiring the great height of the tower. "It's much bigger than it looked from a distance." Moss sprung out from every crevice, and vines had made good progress on reclaiming the stone. He brushed them aside to reveal a plaque hammered into the wall, the letters too weathered to read, but the crow's skull was still recognizable. "One of the Black Towers. We've ventured far too north. And it's occupied." The captain had his ear on the wall. "By what?" "Fire lizards. A huge hive of them." Edward had his hand by the plaque and felt the stone shaking on his fingers. A gasp and wince caught both of their attention, and they turned to the dirty face of a young man with a dark line on his jaw. "What happened?" The captain strode up to the soldier. Come on, out with it." "It was a fire lizard, Captain." He turned his head to present his jaw where the lizard had singed him. It was after this flower I picked." His fingers clamped around a black flower pinned on his collar, the edge of the petals highlighted in bright orange. Edward approached the soldier to inspect the flora, his eyes widened as a thought formed in his head, swiftly followed by a plan. "This is a red lily. The lizards go mad for them," he explained to the crowd gathering around them. "Where did you find this?" "My lord, The man stuttered again, but then he found the words. "There was in a field we crossed, by the tree." He raised his hand towards the tree some distance away. Edward rushed towards Roland, energy from his newfound purpose driving him. "Captain, take 2 men per horse to the field. Gather as many lilies as they can carry and ferry them back here." He strode over to the tower's entrance, where an ancient feeding trough was still stationed. "Bring them back here and pile them on this trough." Roland was quick to object, since the details of Edward's plan eluded him. "My lord, listen to yourself. We cannot fight the wild hunt with flowers." "But we may not have to. The kingdom must know of this attack. If no one warns them, this war will end before it begins." There is enough vegetation that has found a home on the tower that it will fuel a pillar of flame big enough for any town around to see it. We can use the lilies to excite the fire lizard and start the fire that will burn the wild hunt out of our kingdom. He looked around at the faces of the men around him. Their expressions were grim. I cannot ask for any more than you can give. We have lost our homes, our livelihoods, our families. All I ask is that you ride with me, so families all over our kingdom do not experience the doom that fell upon us. In our flight, we find ourselves here at this ancient monolith, and under its tower, we will show these monsters with whom they have chosen to do battle. A murmur seeped out from within the crowd. For fathers and families, a few scattered eyes reached his ears. For king and kingdom. Aye, came the reply with more men behind it and louder. For men and mankind. Aye, all those he laid upon. Edward saw their fists raised. Some held swords, some held their shields. Roland began barking orders to the men, who themselves were moving with renewed vigor. Almost immediately, the horses rode out, carrying men, a few holding so many as 3, while the steeds struggled onward. Some men didn't bother with the animals and simply ran for the field. Several men returned with more red lilies than they could carry, so a few trips were required to fill the trough in its entirety. As their pursuers were not upon them, Roland and Edward worked to organize and establish a defensive position. The buzz of the fire lizard's activity drowned out all noise once they entered the ancient structure. Thousands fluttered to and fro in the wide expanse. The noise had grown once the creatures became aware of their presence, but remained at a cautious distance. The men used the great entrance to the tower as a bottleneck, preventing their foes from freely passing without heavy resistance. However, their mounts were not horses that would panic in the face of danger. They have been known to grow more ferocious when threatened and can only be held back for so long. Roland supervised the building of spike walls that would make the beast's assault less pleasant. When something grabbed his attention in the distance, silhouettes crested the hill they came from and remained there, watching the activity around the tower. Ever-present sunlight illuminated the figures, and the longer his eyes were fixed on them, the more details he discerned. The one that caused his heart to race and blood to rush through him was their blue skin. Piercing eyes stared back at the old soldier. Underneath it, the beast impatiently paced sideways, blood-crimson eyes hungering for death. It raised an arm, a curved blade emerging from behind the mount's side and pointing at the sky as if to threaten it. As the weapon disappeared again in a quick downward slash, Roland felt the heat and warmth drain from his body. From beyond the hill, a large pack of the beast sprinted into view and down the hill towards the tower. "Enemies approach!" Roland yelled at the top of his voice. "Man the defenses! Steel yourselves!" Unsheathing his sword, he formed a line of spearmen behind the entrance and positioned himself behind them with a group of swordsmen. The rest of the men sprinted up the stairs towards the top of the tower, stirring the lizards as they went, but not enough to ignite the air. Edward hoisted the trough with another man and began running up the stairs as fast as they could. They rushed up the steep stone steps, Edward's fingers unleashing a blaze of flame as splinters found their mark when the trough jostled in their hands. At the bottom of the steps, the noise of clashing metal and shouting echoed through the tower, then the screams of pain followed. He briefly paused to glance down the stairwell to see the mass of men holding the beast at bay, but they could not be resisted. Men succumbed to injuries from their accursed weapons and their mounts' claws and fangs. They continued their ascent when only screaming and pleading of mercy could be heard. A quick glance down the stairwell, and Edward the sight of watching the beast execute those who remained alive. The one Edward assumed to be the leader gazed upward, and their eyes met. Even from this distance, he could tell the blue bloods were black and soulless. It swung a strange curved blade in a quick gesture, and then the bastards behind bounded up the stairs. They had to ascend the tower. Despite the old wood ravaging their hands and blood soaking his grip on the trough, he kept pushing on up the stairs. 3 men saw them approach and helped them carry the trough through the defenses they'd established on the level halfway up the tower. Just when he thought there would be no end, the stairs ended and the open sky welcomed them. There were still sounds of combat, but as he expected, they had lost this fight. "Help me," he ordered the man. Together they heaved and tipped the trough, watching the flowers tip over and down the tower. He saw they had dropped lilies all over the stairs on the way up. Sweat was starting to gather on his brow and in his armpits. Way down below, he saw the circling of the fire lizards, as well as their pursuers who were bounding up towards them. The soldier he was with drew his sword, and then he was running towards a defensive position to engage their pursuers. All the while, the blue bastards kept coming. Edward could see it now, a bright orange haze filling the air. Light was washing over the walls, and as he knelt to gaze down, the stone trembled against his palms. The men below intercepted the monsters, fighting as hard as they could. When they finally cut through their meager defense, a furious tempest rose in the tower. Huge tongues of fire swirled and licked the walls, moving unhindered towards Edward. They had seen it now, and there were as much running from it as they were chasing him. The tower shook violently under them. The beasts and their mounts rose out of the stairs, and towards him weapons raised and fangs bared. But it didn't matter, for the fire was lit. How long? Wait, how long do I have left? Sorry.
Done? You there? Hello?
Oh no.
I wasn't keeping track.
Am I coming in through?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
you are.
Yeah.
I'm gonna estimate about another 10 minutes. That's just my guess.
Yeah.
God, there's a lot of dialogue in the next one. Damn it. I really
You want to cut out now?
I wanted to do the first chapter, but I'm not sure if I can get through it. Oh shit.
If you really don't think you can get through it, it's honestly probably better to wait. It's better to, start and finish in one go rather than cut it halfway.
Yeah. All right. Yep. I'll cut it off there, and then we'll.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll
All right.
probably
right.
come back next week or any.
All right. Well, I thought honestly that I agree with Becca with she said how the descriptions and the writing itself was good, but my biggest criticism for you is presentation. And what I mean by that is when you're reading a book, you can read it at your own pace. You kind of have an idea of what the characters should sound like in your own head.
Mm-hmm.
When you're presenting it, you really got to bring some showmanship to it. Because if you give the impression that you're just reading from what is written rather than like acting it out or something, it comes off very boring. And I get it. Not everybody can do that. I've gone through this with so many people, but if you don't bring the passion to it, no one will want to read it. I'm sorry to say, because they're going to assume it's a very dry book.
I mean, that was actually exactly the impression I was starting to get. I knew that there was something in there that was definitely of quality because, well, I'm listening to it for a start and I see the reaction from the chat, but
But go on.
it was the presentation. No, that's it. It's basically the same complaint that you had because you're cutting in and out from it in the presentation. I'm not gonna lie, my attention kind of just broke a few times and I had to re-engage. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I know I have a rather monotone voice. I kind of have to really stretch.
I get you, and like I said, the whole thing with this is that it's a completely different skill set than writing, and I totally understand it. It's just this is the first impression people are going to get of your writing, and it can be kind of dangerous if you get what I mean, because if this is the impression you leave on people, this is how they're going to hear the book when they read it. Now it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
That is fair. Maybe I need to revisit some of the dialogue as well.
It's not the dialogue. You can. It's never a bad idea. But again, like, it's nothing was wrong with the mechanics. It was all the presentation.
Okay.
You kind of, like I said, you got to bring as much passion in reading it as you were writing it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Maybe I need to. I need to work with my voice a bit more and maybe get it in a way that it's not so much effort to actually get those voices and to actually like make the characters voice the characters into closer to as I envision them.
The best advice I can give you for that is to, when this goes up or when we're done, listen to your part again.
Mm-hmm.
That way you can kind of see, oh, I'm low here, or I've gone flat here. It's very useful, especially when you're trying to figure out where to put the emphasis.
Okay. Yeah, I'll watch it back once the stream is over. Yeah, that'll be a good kind of little bit of research for me to do.
Like I said, nothing was really wrong mechanically. You were fine on that front, but never hurts to go back and review stuff.
Yeah. All
right. Anybody else have anything to say?
Unfortunately, no.
No, I'm good.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So I guess it's my turn.
In video it is.
All right. Well,
practice what you preach, my dude.
Then allow me to, as they say, show you bitches up.
But can you beat Carl Saylor?
No, I dream to, but that man is something else. That man is just completely on a different level.
Yeah,
I had to follow that. The last
accents. Time. The accents alone already puts over the edge. I'm sorry.
No, that's because he can do them correctly. I can't, and Becca makes fun of me all the time for that. All right, so as a reminder to where we left off last time, Aviana Aviana was kind of indisposed as all the training from the day before had just completely wrecked her. She could not move, and Silas came by and gave her food and taught her how to do a bit of basic cooking, like how to put something on a grill and how to know when it's done. Not really, advanced cooking, just more like, here's how you don't die in the wilderness. And that, if I'm not mistaken, that leads us to where we are today. So, without further ado, just let me grab my water real quick. Right here. All right, and we'll begin. All right. Aviana sat on the floor panting as Silas put his sword to her neck, his knees still bent and ready to backstep away if need be. Her own sword lay beside her, having been dropped out of her hand after Silas had unexpectedly kicked her in the stomach, causing her to fall to the floor. She was finding it difficult to soothe her aching stomach, as her body was coated in sweat and her clothes were sticking to her again. It had taken 2 full days to recover from their first training session, and even though it had been several days since then, her body still felt as though it had been trampled by wild horses. Since then, the only time the two of them stopped training was to either eat, sleep, or rest when her body would move no longer. You keep expecting me to attack with only my sword. Your opponent can attack in many different ways, not just with their weapon, Silas said, pulling his sword away and placing it at his side. Sorry. I was paying attention to what you were doing. I was blinded. Blinded, Silas replied. My hair, it was getting stuck to my face and I couldn't see, Aviana explained, her face becoming flushed with embarrassment as she removed the sticky back strands from her eyes. You should take the time to see the barber at some point. For now, we'll try something else. Silas walked into the stands around the arena, and she heard him cut something, but couldn't see what he was doing. After a moment, he came back and showed her a thick piece of string he had cut and tossed it to her. This should alleviate the problem, for now. Aviana looked down at the string and moved her bangs and all of her hair to the back as she looped it around her collected hair. Once she had firmly wrapped the string around the hair, she moved the two pieces over and under each other and then pulled as a knot formed. Who taught you how to tie a knot? Silas asked as she looked up at him. No one. Honestly, I kind of taught myself, Aviana responded with a smile. Silas sighed. You'd realize you're not going to be able to just pull that knot apart. You're going to have to cut the rope from your hair in order to get it out. It works for my boots, Aviana replied, gesturing to her brown boots, showing a similar knot on each lace. And how do you get your boots off? Silas inquired, almost sounding as though he was ridiculing her. Aviana lowered her head. I have to bite the knots off in order to get them, she answered. After a moment, Aviana's head shot up and frowned as hard as she could. Why does it matter anyways? It works, doesn't it? Aviana replied, scratching her nails against the stone floor. It matters because there's a right way and there's a wrong way to do things. When you do things the wrong way, you risk drawing attention to yourself. Your job is to remain hidden, whether in the shadows or plain sight. In order to do that job effectively, you need to learn to do things the right way. Silas responded as in a raised, almost scary voice, his face sterner than she had ever seen it. According to you, I'm incapable of doing anything According to you, I'm incapable of doing anything the right way, Aviana responded, her voice trembling slightly at Silas's expression. All week, all you've done is criticize me and smack me with a stick, Aviana yelled as she grabbed the hilt of her sword, squeezing her hand tightly around it. Just as she was about to raise her sword, Silas's foot stepped onto the blade, and no matter how hard she pulled, she was unable to lift it. It is a miracle you have survived as long as you have. Most in your position wouldn't have survived a month, yet here you are, unable to tie a proper knot, and yet still alive after 3 years. I don't know whether you survived by good fortune, fate, or even Tyrann's own intervention, but something kept you alive. So tell me, why are you still alive? Silas asked, his voice firm and expression cold. Why does it matter? Maybe it would have been better if I had died with everyone else, Aviana replied, all of the burning anger she had felt quickly replaced with a chill of fear, as tears began to stream down her cheek. If you really wanted to die, you would have let yourself starve to death. Something made you want to keep living. Now what was it? Silas inquired, his voice softening slightly. Aviana went silent and closed her eyes, her heart pounding in her ears when suddenly all she could hear was screams. Their screams were like the wails of damned souls, the kind that were said to dwell in the abyss. She shook her head and began to talk, hoping to drown him out. My friend Merrick, he helped me when we lost our home. He took care of me, kept me safe and fed. I only started living on my own after I didn't want to be a burden on him anymore, she replied, whimpering. From what the Chancellor told me, he left to be trained by the Guardians, Silas replied calmly. Aviana nodded and wiped the tears from her cheeks. You've told me how you're still alive, but not why you're still alive. Normally, anyone in your position would have allowed themselves to pass, but you haven't, Silas said, gently placing a hand on her shoulders. On her shoulder. Through her tears, Aviana could see Silas was on his knee, looking directly at her. I'm afraid to die, Aviana responded, pulling her knees to her chest. The thought of being alone, of being forgotten, it scares me more than anything in the world. Many people are scared of death. It's a natural fear. But most children are afraid of something more tangible, like banelings. Why are you so scared of death? Because I don't know what will happen. And even if something does happen and I'm able to see everyone again, I don't think I can face them, Aviana answered, her tears in free fall as they stained her shirt. She could feel her cheeks turning red and puffy, but could not find the will to stop herself from crying. Why don't you think you'll be able to face everyone again? When the siege started, I was downstairs that night, sleeping on the floor. The other girls had been making fun of me all day, and I didn't want to be there that night. Then the orphanage was struck by something, and fire began to spread. I heard all the girls wake up, screaming, and several others began crying. Aviana choked on every word before suddenly hearing the screams all over again. She shook her head and cried, attempted to silence them. Aviana, take several deep breaths and focus only on me, Silas said gently, his voice sounding somewhat calming and gentle. Aviana took those several deep breaths from her mouth and continued to wipe the tears from her cheeks. After a moment, she sniffed and looked back up at Silas, his bright blue eyes looking far more gentle than she had ever seen them. Are you going to be all right? Yes. Aviana sniffled and wiped her nose with the back of her hand. Do you think you can continue? Silas asked, his grip tightening on her shoulder in a comforting way. I'll try, Aviana replied. She took several more deep breaths and felt her heart began to ease. I could hear them all rushing towards the door, pounding at it as the entire second floor began to catch fire. Suddenly there was a second attack and something hit the boys' room. Merrick only survived because he had come downstairs that night to comfort me. The two of us found ourselves coughing on smoke, and all we could hear were screams and cries of the wards being destroyed, Aviana said, beginning to scratch her right arm with her left hand. Merrick told me to get everyone out of their beds and downstairs. He left to get water buckets to douse the fires. I ran up to the bedrooms to check on the boys first. All of them were dead. I can still see their lifeless eyes looking back at me, their broken bodies scattered around the room like dolls. Aviana stopped for a moment and wiped entirely new tears from her eyes as she continued, her voice becoming scratchy and hoarse. I screamed and slammed the door, but my screams were overshadowed by the sounds of the other girls. When I looked across the hall, I saw a large beam had blocked the door and everyone was pushing to get the door open. I couldn't move. I could hear their cries for help, but I didn't do anything. I just stood there listening to them beg for someone to save them. After a few moments, there was another explosion. Suddenly, Silas grabbed her left arm. When Aviana looked, she saw that she had scratched her arm to the point of bleeding. Only now was she aware of the fresh blood dripping down her arm and onto the floor. Without a word, Silas got up and went to the water bucket. He took a rag and doused it in water before he came back and wrapped it around the newly formed scratches. What happened after that? Silas asked calmly. I don't remember, Aviana answered, wincing as the cold cloth wrapped around her fresh wounds. Merrick had told me I fainted and had to drag me out of the orphanage. What happened to the matron? She went upstairs to check on one of the other girls who was injured that day. Merrick thinks she died when the first attack hit our orphanage. So you feel responsible for what happened? You think it's your fault that everyone died? Aviana nodded meekly. She never managed to say it to herself, but Silas was correct. As she thought about the events, she could feel the flames licking against her skin, smell the scent of smoke, hear the screams of terror, and see the death and destruction that had occurred all those years ago. Silas gently lifted her chin and looked into her eye. Even if you and your friend worked together, it was likely that both of you would have been killed along with those girls. Even if he had managed to find someone to help, it would have been impossible. There is nothing you could have done to save them. Aviana sniffled and looked down and saw that Silas had removed the cloth from her arm, the bleeding now gone, and the wounds only stinging slightly. What do I do to stop the memories? They hurt so much. You can't stop them, but they can become your strength. Use them to keep yourself going. Merrick gave you the chance to live, and Savet or not, you have an obligation to seize this opportunity. If you listen to my instruction and allow me to teach you, I can help you gain the strength and find the courage to make sure that the next time something like this happens, to make sure that the next time something like this won't happen again. I give you my word, if you train under me, you'll be able to hold your head high and proud when you see your friends again. Aviana wiped the tears from her eyes and looked into Silas's. Just by looking at them, she could tell he had meant every word he had said. Her thoughts turned to Merrick, who was no doubt already training to his hardest to ensure that no one would have to suffer the way he did. This was her chance, and was likely going to be the only chance she would ever have. The only chance to be something other than everyone said that she should be. I will. I will do everything I can to show you I can succeed, she replied firmly. Good. Clean yourself up, and we'll continue. All right, that's enough for the day, Silas said as he pulled away from her last attack. Aviana panted, fresh sweat dripping down her forehead and onto the floor as she fell to her knees, gagging as though she was going to vomit. After their talk, she began training herself as hard as she could, practicing every moment Silas told her to, following his every direction, only occasionally talking back. Your form needs work, and you need to put more focus into your footwork, and you need to move more. However, I will admit you've improved a lot since we started, Silas said, almost sounding proud. Aviana responded with a smile and a small blush as she picked herself off the floor. Don't get the idea you can just start fighting anyone. You're far away from being a master swordsman, Silas said, his tone returning to the stringent tone he's been using while they train. That being said, I can't afford to keep training you every day, as I have other obligations I must attend to. I have taught you the fundamentals, so now it'll be your responsibility to continue coming here and practicing. Every Sunday, I will come back and evaluate your performance. Aviana blinked confused and cocked her head at Silas. Who will I train with then? Aviana asked. Silas walked over to a large wooden wardrobe at the north side of the room, just past the wooden seating area, and opened it. She couldn't see what was in it until he lifted something and turned around. In his hand was a large wooden practice dummy, which he carried into the arena and placed at the white line where he would normally take his position. It was a simple dummy made out of straw wrapped in burlap to keep it together, with a small sack on the top that resembled a person's head and was about as tall as Silas's neck. This can't fight back. How am I supposed to help practice defense? Aviana asked as she turned back to Silas, slouching as she sat. This is only intended to help you practice your swings and footwork. If you're fast enough, you don't need to block. When we meet Sundays, I will train you in defense, Silas replied. This dummy will also help you understand how long your reach is and how much distance you can put between yourself and the enemy and still be effective in combat. All right, Aviana replied, unsure what to say as she stared at this dummy's oddly shaped head. Now, if you manage to impress me on Sundays, I will reward you. Aviana's eyes lit up at the mention of a reward, and she sat up despite her aching body. How will I know if I'm improving on my own? Aviana asked. That will be for me to determine. But if you keep practicing the fundamentals as I have taught you, you should do fine. Aviana nodded. Yes, sir. Good. Now wash up. The water should be warm enough now. I have to leave, he said as he began walking to the eastern wall. Also, I advise you to stay here tonight. Tonight is supposed to be cold, and I don't think you want to be caught outside with how exhausted you are. Silas, can I please live here? Where I'm living now is on its last legs, and I think it's about to collapse, Aviana asked. She had thought about making the request for a while now, but now that she wasn't going to be Silas every day, it was either now or never. Silas rubbed his hand against his graying, bearded chin. You could. However, be warned. There have been multiple times when we have found people breaking in during the night. We normally have to fight them off, then repair whatever damage they have caused, Silas said bluntly. Aviana stiffened at the thought of fighting someone other than Silas. He was right. She was no match for him even when he held back. This made her less confident about taking on the ward's more dangerous residents. It is also worth mentioning that during the summer, this place can become unlivable due to the heat. The boarded windows and various fires have a bad habit of trapping heat in here, Silas warned. Is there anything else I should know if I decide to stay here? Aviana asked. If you are considering it, I should teach you about our knock. Silas wrapped his fingers against the hall's wooden support beam in an odd, rhythmic way. If you hear that against the eastern wall, make sure to knock twice against it. That way any other members know you're friendly. Though I doubt many will be coming here. If you decide to leave, make sure you perform the knock when you come back. That way, if there's another raven inside, they will know you are a friend. After Silas's explanation, he walked towards the eastern wall, as about to lift the hatch, before stopping and turning back to her. Also, whenever you enter or leave, make sure you survey the area around you. Ensure that no one watches you use this entrance. Do you understand? Yes, sir, I understand. Silas nodded and turned back around, slowly lifting the hatch and looking both ways, then up, before quickly ducking out and closing it slowly behind him. The room was silent. The room became silent again as Aviana lied down on her back and looked up at the ceiling. Her body was hurting gradually less and less with each training session, and she could feel herself growing a bit stronger. However, every time they finished, she always felt mentally and physically exhausted, as well as more than a little hungry. When she looked at the area where Silas normally left the sack of food he would bring, she found laying on the blanket was several pieces of fruit, strips of jerky, and half of loaf of bread. Smiling, she needed to remember to thank Silas. As she picked herself off the floor and began to undress, she noticed that the last few days had taken a toll on her clothing. Several new tears and scuff marks had appeared, and the fabric was stretched to the point of almost hanging off her. Though her clothes had suffered, her wounds from earlier in the week had healed nicely and were barely visible, aside from the fresh ones made earlier. By the time she had taken off the bandages, the odor coming off them was so awful she started gagging. She thought that by throwing the bandages on the fire into one of the cooking braziers, she would get rid of the smell. Though instead of getting rid of the offending odor, it had the opposite effect and spread across the entire hall, forcing her to outside until the smell had left the building. As she finished undressing and lifted the cloth from the warm water, she thought about how impossible it would have been to bathe if she was still at the storehouse. It had felt like an eternity since she had been there, and given how harsh the weather had been as of late, she was just praying it was still there. If it hasn't fallen over yet, it should last me at least a couple more months, Aviana thought to herself as she began to bathe. And that's it for this week.
Damn. That, I don't know why, that felt long. Anyway, I do have a lot of positives to share with this one. First off, the beginning half of it was very, very nice and very, very charming. I like that. We got motivation, we got an understanding of the character, where she came from, and how she's feeling about all of this. It was a great moment, and I very much enjoyed it. I liked the details about Silas training her, specifically the bit where he mentioned the reach of the sword, because that is an actual thing that I had to learn while practicing. Other than that, there was a few. I don't know. Some of the dialogue in the early half felt weird. Like some of it just didn't sound natural. I can't exactly point out specifics, but that was an issue that I had.
Part of the problem, in all honesty, is that I was getting tongue-tied a few times for some reason. I think it was honestly more my performance, but this is obviously going to undergo some retooling later.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I kind of sort of noticed that about my own chapter when I was reading it today, because some of the bits were leftovers of the original.
Fanatic, you still with us?
But yeah, that was really, really tied up with where Silas points out that the knots that she's been tying on with her hair, that she needed to freaking cut it. She can't just untie it. And he asks, in the bit when he asks, how does she tie her boots? And she gets defensive and just shouts, "It works, okay?" That was
like a child would.
It was hilarious. It was like how a child would do it, which is exactly what she is, which made it all the more charming and believable, I guess.
But I do kind of see what you mean though about some of the dialogue. Like, yeah, there were a few points in it where I was like, yeah, I got to fix that later. But like I said to you yesterday, I usually go through these at least twice during the week before I present. So some stuff still is manages to get through. But I'm glad the majority of it was really good. That makes me very happy.
All right, no problem, man. I mean, just sharing my thoughts. Anyone else want to have a go?
Seems pretty straightforward. I do like how the like I like the training thing. Maybe it's just me, but I think I quite enjoy the like the fact that she's actually having to work for stuff. I think that's very, very, very gratifying to see.
Oh, I just remembered. I actually really like Silas as a character. He actually kind of reminds he's got a great father figure energy going on for there. I'm really happy to see it.
Silas is one of quite frankly, Silas is one of the easiest characters to kind of write. And I mean that, like, actually writing his dialogue is really easy because these are the kind of people I sort of grew up with, with a lot of father figures. So it's sort of, so I sort of had learned the entire scope of that, but that's why it becomes so easy to write.
Yeah, I kind of imagine him kind of looking like a more well-dressed Kratos from the new God of War games. Like, that's the kind of energy
the way I always pictured him is, Hank Pym from Ant-Man, from the MCU movie.
Yeah.
I'm imagining he kind of looks like that actor, but a bit younger.
Frederick Douglass? No, not Frederick Douglass.
Frederick Douglass?
Wrong guy. Catherine Zeta-Jones's husband.
Hold on. I can't remember the actor's name.
Frank?
It's oh Christ. I wish it would just tell me
Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas. Yeah.
I was close.
Yeah, but I always imagined Silas kind of looking like Michael Douglas, but obviously a slightly younger guy.
Yeah.
Because if you remember him in Ant-Man, he was a very stringent kind of guy, but he had his lighter moments. Silas just has more lighter moments than he did in Ant-Man, than he did in the movie.
I want you to break into a place and steal some things. Makes sense.
Fuck. Yeah. Shadows of Tyranny is just Ant-Man. It's like instead of taking Scott Lang, Michael Douglas just took his kid.
Nice.
Indeed.
Fanatic, do you have anything you want to share?
I don't know where he is.
I think that he has died.
Anyway, I wanted to point this out because I'm not sure if you saw this, but Becca stated that hand over an Oscar to the 6'5" bard over here for his emotional portrayal of a 12-year-old girl. Good job on that, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it actually was fairly impressive, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it.
Nice. All right, well, we're almost finished with Battle of the Seven Suns. We only have I think 3 more chapters before we finish with the book. And hopefully people will want to read it for themselves. What?
Yeah, I'm gonna toss out something really quick. I'll be back.
Go for it. I actually had a very fun theater experience with Ant-Man because my audience was very into it and they were laughing with every single joke.
I enjoyed the hell out of that movie.
Yeah, I do too. I like it quite a bit. It's a fun heist movie.
That's a fun movie. Much more fun than it has any right to be.
Yeah, it's they made a good Ant-Man movie.
Well, I think the whole reason is because they ignored the Hank Pym thing and let it be Scott Lang. You had a lot more freedom than if you had done Hank Pym.
Also, you don't have to worry about the spousal abuse.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that either. And not only that, but Paul Rudd just the way he relates with his kid in those movies, very even the supporting cast, it's just the perfect superhero comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's just creepy. Get away from me, old man.
Don't worry, he wants Bridget Regan and Amelia Clark. It's fine. We spent the whole solo thing. We were just like, this movie would be so much better if Amelia Clark spent the last like half hour modeling underwear or something.
I kind of want to see it. I kind of don't want to see that anyway. So I'm fine. I'll pass.
That is totally fine. She's more like cute than she is hot, but I still think Amelia Clark is very cute. Thank you for clarifying that.
I mean, I don't think anybody does. And if you do, you better not tell me where you live, because if you do, I'm coming over with a 12 gauge. And a few buckshots as well. They will not find the body, I promise you that.
Fuck. Literally Game of Thrones waifus. Jesus Christ.
There are better waifus to get in Game of Thrones than Amelia Clark, like Emmy.
The fact it has them.
Well, Esme Bianco is really hot. That's one thing.
Who cares? They all die anyway.
True. They're all dead.
Except for all the ones that are underaged, apparently.
Yeah.
Interesting choice over there, Dan, and in whatever the hell the other guy was. Oh no.
Jesus fuck.
Oh crap. Anyway.
What are we like? That's my boy.
What are we doing now?
Yeah.
Alrighty. Okay. So to summarize what has been happening in the book for the last 153 pages ish. Basically what has been happening is the Dragon Lords are engaged in a battle with a group of rebels who have basically pooled all their resources for one big battle on a plain with some big elephants and 2 dragons to the Dragon Lords 1, since they wanted to try and draw out the enemy to their out of their forests. The issue is the Dragon Lords underestimated the numbers of the enemy in front of them and are hotly pressed in. However, there was a boon from a strange divine entity who seems to be from the future, because she uses the phrase glass cannon. And she temporarily gave some power to Hera, the leader of the Dragon Lord faction. Or at least the commander of the army in the field. So she was able to use her family's ancestral sword to create a fire that made the elephants stampede. The elephants on the other side stampede. And unfortunately for her, the power is now run out, and her 2 bodyguards, orc bodyguards, Toresh and Urgast, are trying to keep her safe in the chaos of battle, and that's where we pick up. Torash and Urgast swung their weapons over and over again, the massive iron veiled soldiers continuing to rush toward them. Arms burning from hours of constant exertion, Urgast spat into the face of an oncoming Satharis soldier, causing him to flinch long enough for Urgast to slice him in half. "We might be getting too old for this," Torash yelled toward Urgast. He slashed another man across the chest. "We speak for yourself, you young pup," Urgast yelled back, slamming his fist into another mail-clad face, shattering the human's face like pottery. Growling, he kept on swinging wildly, ignoring the ache in his arms. Abruptly, Torash yelled as a pair of Satharis men and ran at him and managed to nick his arm, only to have their heads removed. Urgast raised his sword in respect to his friend, then yelled as another man and rushed at Torash from the side. The other orc managed to turn, but the lance went straight through his thigh, causing him to drop to the ground. Bellowing, Urgast rushed to his friend and began laying about him with the sword. He only had to hold them off long enough for the others to move Torash to the back of the line. More and more Satharians moved in, swords drawn. Breathing heavily, Urgast bared his fangs and threw himself into the massive enemies, hacking and slashing wildly. The old battle rage was upon him, his vision obscured by a haze of red. He barely noticed as an enemy sword cut through his left arm, leaving only a stump, then a spear skewered his leg. Urgast bellowed again, transferring his sword to his unwounded hand, and slashed another man across the chest. Roaring, he raised his stump, spraying blood in all directions and blinding everyone around him. Now he was only using one arm and an exhausted arm at that. The sword caught into the man's chest cavity. Urgast tried to rip it free, but it was stuck firm. Seizing their opportunity, the Satharians charged and started hacking at him. This was a good fight, Urgast thought as his bad leg was impaled again. Unable to support himself, the grizzled orc dropped to his knees. "I gave it everything I had." Smiling, he leaped at the nearest Satharis man and tore out his throat with his teeth. The sword going underneath his armor and through his stomach was barely noticeable to him. Then a sword hit his neck, and the world went black. Torash watched in horror as Urgast fell, head flying away from his body. The crushing sense of his old friend's loss, descending on him like a heavy weight. Several orcs rushed in to pull the enemy away from the body, but by that point, Urgast's body was hacked nearly beyond recognition. The fall of the orc veteran caused several of the human troops to lose heart, but the orcs were enraged at the death of their comrade. Many of them threw themselves into the fray, pushing back the enemy and causing several to fall before being forced to retreat back to their own ranks. The battle was not going their way anymore. Something had to save them, or this battle would end in a horrifying disaster. As if it couldn't get any worse, Torash heard a loud roar coming from the distance, and the sounds of hundreds of horns. The enemy had committed everything, and they were completely unready for the storm that was coming. Grunting, Torash hefted his axe, grimacing at the pain in his leg. He would have to fight as soon as they arrived. He was an orc general, and orcs did not run from a fight. Narcissus and Meraxia chased the other dragon through the skies doggedly. They managed to clash a few times, but the golden dragon seemed like she was only concerned with keeping them away from the troops on the ground. Meraxia managed to attack the Mammoks in a few streaks of truce before being turned and attack the enemy dragon, just to keep her away from destroying the few thousand troops that remained of their army with her own blast of flame. Snarling, Meraxia unleashed a jet of flame at her foe. The other dragon dodged and shot toward the troops on the ground, but before the golden beast could strike, Meraxia managed to drive her away. Sensing the Meraxia was closing in on her, the golden dragon abruptly started climbing to the sky. "We've got them!" Narcissus grunted as Meraxia roared and surged toward the sky. As the two dragons neared, the golden dragon turned around and dropped toward them. Growling, the two dragons collided in midair, causing Narcissus' teeth to click together from the impact. Grimacing, he hung on to the saddle so he wasn't thrown around by the ferocity of the dragons battling. Snarling, Meraxia kicked her enemy in the stomach, then tore a chunk out of her neck with her fangs. The other dragon screamed and ripped at Meraxia's side with her claws, lashing her fangs onto her shoulder and holding on tight. Abruptly, all sound cut out, and there was only silence. The wind abruptly picked up, and the golden dragon was suddenly hurled backward as if by an invisible hand. Narcissus, the voice whispered in his ear and caused him to stand right toward the source. Incongruously, a girl with black and silver hair was floating next to him, red dress floating around her. I need your help. Who are you? Narcissus demanded, drawing Silver Queen and pointing at her. She looked at the sword as if it were a toy and rolled her eyes. I am your savior, she said, casually putting 2 fingers against the sword and pushing to the side. I know everything about you. How you were a small child abandoned by your father. Your mother tolerated the excesses while quietly ruling the kingdom. You have a need to do the right thing, and that has been evidenced by how you have tried to change throughout this charge. Swallowing, Narcissus lowered the weapon. What do you want from me? I'm here to provide you with a choice, the girl said calmly. You can turn the tide of battle one way or another. You can take my offer and become the hero who won the victory that solidified the dynasty for nearly 1,000 years, saved your lover and the unborn child in her womb. Narcissus gasped in amazement, but she kept talking as if before he could say anything. Or you could flee, become the Dragon Lord after your father dies, rule for a few decades, but your line will be wiped out, and the dwarves and elves will enslave all the humans. All that is required is your life. Meraxia snarled, and Narcissus realized that she could see and hear whoever this was as well. How do you know all this? Narcissus asked, slowly lowering his sword, or then sheathing it on the saddle. What are you? You smell like my mother, Meraxia snarled, lashing her tail and shifting ineffectually. As she tried to move, Narcissus realized she was frozen in midair. I was once human, the ethereal woman put her hand on his. Now I am something more. Something that is able to see the 2 possibilities that will occur from this and understand how the scales can be tipped in either direction. So, he swallowed, then cleared his throat. I need to die in order for us to win this battle. Yes, the girl said sadly. I can muster enough power to use you as fuel for something marvelous, something not seen since the days of Aemond himself. What are you going to do? He whispered. First, you need to agree or not to my offer, and before you say anything, carefully consider what you should do. What is the right thing to do? Narcissus took a sharp intake of breath. He only had a minute to think about it. She said that Hera and their child, my child, would die if he didn't do this. It was still very frightening. I suppose doing the right thing isn't always easy, he thought sadly. How do I do it? He asked. Jump, she said simply. All right, he said slowly. Don't do this, Narcissus, Meraxia said desperately, trying to squirm around, but the invisible force held her tight as he unstrapped his legs from the saddle. Please, you can do this without dying. I need to do this. Narcissus put his hand on Meraxia's neck and steeled himself to throw himself out into the abyss. For a moment, he couldn't do it. He was too scared. I don't want to die, he whispered, wanting to push himself off, but he just couldn't. Nobody does. The girl put her hand on his shoulder comfortingly. Taking a deep breath, Narcissus was about to throw himself off, then he paused and shrank back. He glanced aside at his companion. Could you take my hand? He asked. I don't want to be alone when it happens. Smiling gently, the girl gave him a warm hug, almost as if he were her little brother, then took his hand. Of course I can, she agreed. Will it hurt? He breathed in and steeled himself. Your body will be gone before you hit the ground, she promised. All right. Narcissus looked up at the sun, then closed his eyes and threw himself toward the ground. Wind rushed up past him as he hurtled toward the ground. The girl holding his hand tight as the earth came up to meet him. Meraxia watched in horror as Narcissus threw himself off her back toward the ground. Desperately, she struggled against the invisible force keeping her in place. I have to save him, she thought. Growling, she strained to move her wings. Just as he reached the midpoint between her and the ground, the restraints vanished and she started dropping. Rather than getting control, Meraxia allowed herself to free fall toward him, wing claws outstretched so she could grab him. Almost there, she thought, as she got closer and closer to her rider. I can save him. Just before her claws managed to grab him, Narcissus exploded into an expanding wall of blue light. Narcissus screamed as she felt the connection sever and reattach to someone on the ground. Lashing her tail, Meraxia shifted in the air and unleashed a jet of fire toward the light. It had taken her rider from her. It was responsible for her being forced to endure this pain again. The fire passed right through the wall and bathed the Sitharis in fire, incinerating dozens at once. Screaming, she reared up and unleashed another stream of flame. The wall remained, and then started rippling. Meraxia paused and watched in amazement as she saw shapes moving through it. What is this? Ingama watched in amazement as the wall of blue light expanded in front of his army, halting their advance. He glanced around, noting that the wall had spread out all along his front line. What sorcery is this? He snarled, raising his wedge-shaped sword and tapping it against the barrier experimentally. It bounced off with a clank, almost as if it were made of metal. Then he heard it. Charging feet, stampeding horses, and high above them the sound of two large dragons bellowing out a challenge. He only had a few seconds to yell, "Run!" before two twin torrents of fire blasted through the portal. Ingama leaped to the side, screaming as a tendril of flame caught on his pants. The men on the ground started running, trying to escape the firestorm. Ilgameth tried to crawl away, eyes watering with pain. When the yells of charging men came through the other side of the portal, Ilgameth turned to see thousands of enemy troops rushing through the blue wall straight at them. He only had time to blink before the enemy horses trampled him. Hera gaped as thousands of troops flooded through the barrier, all of them flying behind the imperial banner of the white dragon on red. Like twin messengers of fiery death, Melee's and Catastrophe shot through the portal and blasted the enemy army. Melee's silver icy fire and Catastrophe's bright red fires destroying the men with equal efficiency. The sound of a dragon descending toward her caused Hera to look up just before Meraxia dropped to the ground next to her. The red and black dragon growled and lowered her head toward Hera. You ready to kill these bastards? She asked, voice filled with a combination of rage and pain. Grimacing at how tired she felt, Hera pulled herself away from the men supporting her and climbed into the saddle. Tentatively, she put her hand on Meraxia's neck. Immediately, she felt the dragon's thoughts, almost as if they shared the same mind. So Odin's blessing is true, she thought in amazement. We really can feel each other's thoughts. Taking a deep breath, she urged Meraxia into the sky, just as two more dragons joined the beast they'd been fighting earlier in the battle. Melee's and Catastrophe roared out their challenge, and Meraxia added her own scream to the chorus. Abruptly, Catastrophe turned in the air, the black dragon's midnight wings propelling him toward Hera and Meraxia. I knew it! Carlian's voice drifted over to her as Catastrophe's thunderous wing beats as he drew closer, raising his hands to look toward her. I knew the Meraxia will be yours. Let's save this for later, Hera yelled back, turning Meraxia toward the golden dragon. That one is mine. And that'll conclude it.
Sweet.
I really like the beginning part, not gonna lie. I kind of think my attention span kind of ran short, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's
But
fine.
As for the beginning bit, I really liked. I forgot the name of the orc.
Ergast.
Yes, I really liked that. I really liked that the orcs all got enraged in a freaking fury when they saw that he was killed. It's like I just saw that and I thought to myself, yeah, the orcs are a proud species, and you do not fuck around with them.
I just find the idea of dwarves and elves taking over the world just preposterous.
Yeah, they would probably murder each other long before that happened.
No, not even that. Like, oh, what? Twig people and midgets? What are they supposed to do?
Holy shit, Charles. Holy racism, Batman.
Can't be racist against a race that doesn't exist.
I know.
Well,
Yeah, I know.
Oh god.
well, they're very hardy folk with deep pockets, and they're mostly trying to manipulate humans into fighting each other, so that when they come in, they won't have much of an army to deal with.
Did you make an allegory for Jews like Tolkien did?
Maybe.
Subconscious.
He doesn't deny it. He just says, "Yeah, maybe."
I was actually like, but kind of seriously, I actually liked the kind of using a similar idea to George R. R. Martin with the Faith, where basically they're behind everything that is plaguing the realm throughout the reign of the Targaryens. And I just kind of decided, I can just use some fantasy races like the elves and dwarves, where the elves feel that they have a claim on the throne because their ancestor was pushed off of the throne. She abdicated, but they're still angry about it. And the dwarves just don't like the fact that the humans are bad for business. The instability of their constant warring is a problem.
Done. Please don't tell me that you based the dwarves off. Actually, no, I'm not even going to say that because I might flag myself.
Off of Jews? Or off of Jews? Or
I didn't say it. He said
No,
it.
I did earlier.
No, I didn't base it off of Jewish stereotypes. No.
The Armenians, yes, those,
Yes. Don't could be so proud right now.
They're so Sitharas is basically fantasy India, and the elves are trying to cause a rebellion, and I'm more using Lord of the Rings / Aragon style elves rather than like the twig people elf stereotype.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember a thing about Aragon. All I saw was the movie.
Same, actually.
Oh,
it's like, is that the one
actually.
with the talking dragons?
Yeah,
No,
Which,
no, they didn't
is actually-
talk.
I thought they did.
Well, they
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
to their user through a psychic connection or something.
Yeah. It wasn't
Yeah, well-
physically talking, it was a mental connection.
Yeah. Which, funnily enough, Disney Plus is now becoming the home of all bad Fox movies because that's now on Disney
Yeah,
Plus.
what was it? 70-something billion and you got Aragon.
I think
Nice.
It was an
What?
obscene amount of money.
Hmm.
Probably
Uh,
well
for-
spent, I guess.
Oh, well, technically Aragon it broke even. It had a budget of 100 million. It made 250 million.
That is an actual travesty.
That moment at the end of the movie where that guy reveals, "Oh, I have a dragon too," and he's behind the banister. I'm just now thinking as an adult, how long has that dragon been back there? Like, do you just keep him there? Does he just not do anything until you remove the banister?
The word moreover. Man, those books, the third and fourth really start to sour on me, and that was because of one character, Roran.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I liked him in Eldest, and then as I read more in the third and fourth book, I couldn't stand him.
He's
Yeah. Oh.
yeah, and at least kind of like he doesn't become a Gary Stew, which is nice.
Oh no, he's an arsehole, but he's also an arsehole with plot armor.
That is actually very true. Yeah.
300 men. 300 men. Are you shitting?
Yeah, there's a battle in which 300 men come at him. Like, admittedly, he creates a hill and uses like a geographic like advantage, but yeah, he kills 300 guys in one battle.
And
Impressive.
the words that repeat in my mind is Roran knew his back was covered. Roran knew his men were behind him, and it drove me crazy. Fucking, I was so tired of what Roran knew. Just, oh.
Yeah. Eventually, we will watch Aragon and the Percy Jackson movies and Artemis Fowl.
Why do you waste our time? Why?
Stop.
Because I
saw
want to
I saw the
monetize your
climax.
pain. Because I want to monetize your pain.
Don, you are a cruel and sadistic man.
And
No.
proud of it.
No, I'm just a very stupid man because I keep letting him do it.
You love it. You love it, really.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I forced him to watch all the Transformers movies.
Oh,
I don't
I think
think
those
he's
are
ever going
fun.
to forgive you for that.
they have some enjoyment to them.
No.
No.
Transformers movies.
Really?
We watched all of them, and we got maybe like 5 chuckles across the movie. All 5 movies, and we were just bored during the action because we hated all the characters.
Good lord.
I just wanted to see robots blowing each other apart. That's it.
Oh, even that's bad. It's
Yeah,
not
I
filmed
know.
very well. It's not filmed very well. The compositing's terrible. The shaky cam is awful.
Mm.
And Optimus Prime just kills everything in his path and removes all tension.
Are you sure this is Optimus Prime we're talking about here?
No. Optimus was replaced after the first movie.
Well, he died and came back.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Throne of
Coming
Glass.
out.
Throne of Glass. I'll have to ask Setter. I think that she's done, but I don't know. Like, I'm just kind of gonna be like Tarek in terms of I have nothing but apathy for most of this book because it's a stupid tournament arc with a character that I hate. Well, we will watch. You don't have to watch Aragon if you don't want to. You don't.
No, you know I'm going to. Mostly because I have nothing better to do with my time.
What is something that you enjoy watching?
I like the Romero movies.
Fair.
I like Romero. I like. You know, it's a good movie. You know, it's a good movie. The 1990s Ninja Turtle movie. That's a good movie.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I just like good movies.
Yeah,
No,
like Mad
it's not
Max
allowed.
Fury Road. Or
Yeah, I
Pacific
enjoy that
Rim.
movie.
Pacific
Oh,
Rim.
how can you not love Fury Road, though?
Yeah. The fact that they managed to slip in a guy playing a flamethrower guitar and have it make sense in the setting is incredible.
Yeah.
The whole time he's just chilling out on his little truck, playing his guitar.
Yeah.
Nothing else matters.
And the fact that he got incorporated into the fight as well was yeah.
Is
Victoria was the best thing.
Yeah.
or
No. Oh, okay.
No.
No, Balerion, you're not such a troll because it's so goddamn obvious that you're not being sincere.
Balerion, you were there.
You were asking more questions about the movie than we were. No, I am a no. I'm a worse
No, that's the
soul.
scary part. Dunn is genuine. That's the worrying part.
Why? Because I'll actually do those things?
Yes.
Oh God, Dan! I remember
Oh,
this.
you know what? You know what? Fuck it. You know what? We should make time and watch Detective Pikachu.
Oh God.
Maybe we should do it like video game adaptation month. We'll get to watch Warcraft.
I tried that. Warcraft's good. I like Warcraft.
Oh, okay.
Rise of Skywalker.
Actually, me and my friend tried doing that about a few years ago. We got as far as Mortal Kombat 1, and then we just stopped.
Souls didn't take any.
Oh, you stopped at like the end of like one of the better
No!
ones.
No, wait. No, we got as far as like Resident Evil. I apologize. It's been a while since I've thought about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, like, why is it worse that I'm genuine? I'm curious. Is it just that I'll genuinely make you watch these bad movies, or?
Yeah. You genuinely say, "Come on, let's go watch this," and then I'll monetize, you bitching into a microphone for 2 hours.
I still remember when we watched The Rise of Skywalker. That was soul crushing.
Oh, you were there for
there was
that.
only one. There was only one movie I ever walked it. There's only like a small selection of movies that I ever walked into the theaters, finished all the way through, and felt dead inside by the end of it. They are in order of my memory. I guess Batman versus Superman. Maybe on that one. Either The Last Night or Age of Extinction. Either one of those two. Maybe both of them actually. And then the last one was Rise of Skywalker, because I watched the EFAP stream where they went over the leaks, and I was like, wow, this is all really fucking stupid. And then I watched the film, and I'm like, yeah, it feels like I've already seen all of this.
I watched the movie in cinema, and I couldn't believe that the leaks were coming true. It was mind-blowing.
It was beat for beat exactly as the leaks said it was, and I was thinking, no, why? It was the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I remember walking out of Batman v Superman and looking at, as Jesse Eisenberg was the last thing you saw, and I said, why was he Luthor? And not only that, but later on, I found out that he was not the first Luthor. So in a conversation, I said, I would have loved to have watched Clancy Brown beating the shit out of Jesse Eisenberg, because like he said in the movie, God wasn't there to defend me from daddy's fists. And I'm like, you're telling me Clancy Brown beat the shit out of Jesse Eisenberg?
That's a movie I would see.
I would pay to see that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since Clancy Brown's an actually good actor.
No, he's also Lex Luthor in like almost every media.
Yeah, he's voiced Lex Luthor. He's played Lex Luthor for more hours than anybody else in the business.
Yeah.
Tariq, please don't remind me of that cringy piece of dialogue. I felt physical pain just hearing it.
The weird part was that it's weird. I kind of like the way the line was delivered. But at the same time, he sounds like such a petulant child.
Yeah, he's a little bitch in a lot of ways.
So that's why I like to imagine it was Clancy Brown.
Yeah, because Clancy Brown has machismo and a deep voice.
Oh, exactly.
Oh boy.
And charisma and gravitas.
Yeah, just about.
Alrighty. Any other thoughts on my reading before we close out?
Nope, I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
Cool.
We're good.
There was not anything horrifically wrong with it. I'm glad.
No.
That's good. Alrighty. Well, the nice thing is the battle will be finished next week. I'm very excited for that, to finally get to finish it up. But we will call it good for today. We will see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.